correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is essentially what you're trying to do is lower the tariffs on our goods going over to other countries so we can export more, and our tariffs have been traditionally lower, and therefore our interests are adversely affected by that lack of parity, so to speak. So the idea with the trade agreements is to lower both, which should benefit both large businesses, medium businesses, small businesses. Everybody should benefit from that, is my understanding. And are there any natural, adverse interests that small businesses and big businesses would have in this whole process, or historically have they both benefited?
Well, I would say virtually all the time their interests are synonymous, and our goals would equally serve both small and large businesses. To the extent that we're eliminating tariffs, different companies will depending on their capabilities, will take advantage of that new market access, obviously. But I would submit that to the extent that a tariff is eliminated, or more importantly, a non-tariff barrier is eliminated, or a sector, telecommunications or insurance, is opened up, I would submit that it is the small and medium-sized enterprises that stand the most to gain, because they are less likely to have an army of lawyers and trade experts who can find their way around otherwise complex trade barriers.
Okay, thank you. And relative to free trade agreements, I think historically the goal was to do it on a broader basis. If you look at NAFTA, if you look at the African free trade, the Caribbean basin, DOA, that whole idea was to lower, and we've run into difficulties in that area, so it seems like more and more we're having a country-to-country, U.S. with Panama, U.S. with Peru, South Korea, Colombia, etc., Singapore, others that we've done in the past. Does that seem to be the trend that's maybe politically the most realistic to anticipate in the future?
Well, we certainly would like to see trade liberalization occur on a global basis as well. The Doha negotiations, as you mentioned, have been going on for a while now. We're still hoping we can achieve success, and there happens to actually be a lot of activity right now on that front. But I think I would envision that there would continue to be, in addition to global efforts, more bilateral efforts. And I think Europe is clearly on this track, Canada is, and others, and in Asia there's been a proliferation of these bilateral trade agreements. So I would envision you're going to see a continuation of not only WTO global trade liberalization efforts, but also these bilateral agreements for a number of reasons, including you can frankly do a lot more in a bilateral agreement. You can eliminate tariffs completely. You can open up sectors completely. You can assure higher protections of intellectual property in a bilateral agreement, far more than you can in a global agreement where you have to get the consent of 150 WTO members.
Right. And it seems to me, just as one member of Congress who's been following this for the last 13 years since I've been here, it seems like it just, unfortunately, the political realities of Congress are that it's going to be more and more challenging to get one that deals with the whole region and the United States as opposed to individual countries. It's just tougher and tougher, unfortunately. I mean, I think we benefit from trade agreements, and I'd like to see them broader, but that just doesn't seem politically to be doable in Congress anytime in the near future to me. So it looks like you're going to see more and more of these country-to-country. Could you comment on Fast Track, which was the old name and now Trade Promotion Authority, and how important that is, in actually accomplishing these trade agreements in a way that's favorable to the U.S.?
Right. The Fast Track, or as we call it now, Trade Promotion Authority, I think the best way to think of it is from the perspective of the negotiator. You're at the negotiating table and you're negotiating with your counterpart, and ultimately they're going to want to know, are you the ultimate authority? Is this the end of the negotiations? Can you deliver? Or are we going to get a deal here, and then it's going to come back to Congress to change the agreement and modify a series of provisions, as opposed to say, all right, in its totality, we think this is a good agreement or we think it's a bad agreement. I think there's a tremendous amount of power that you give a negotiator, and a negotiator has to have in order to drive the best deal for U.S. interests. And without Fast Track, without TPA, it's much more difficult to get that best value, best deal for the United States. Our view has been, continues to be, that every president of whatever party should have fast-track trade promotion authority. It is just so essential to driving the best bargain for U.S. companies. I think they should always have it. It's unfortunate that it lapsed. It is our hope that we can reclaim and renew this authority so that for the balance of this administration and for the next president. The next president should have this authority regardless of what party that president is from.
Thank you. And before I yield back, I just want to make one point, just emphasize something that you said in your testimony, and that's relative to the free trade agreement with Colombia. This was essentially begun under the previous administration, under President Clinton, and it's been carried on through the Bush administration. And I think it's very important to recognize that country is critical to the interests of the United States in South America. When one considers Chavez and Venezuela and others in that region who certainly don't have the interests of the United States in mind, I think we ought to be very careful to harm the relationship that we have with the government in Colombia right now, because they are really critical to U.S. interests. And I would yield back my time.